Okay, let's start. Good evening. My name is Susan Stevenson, and I'm the chair of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation for the Village of Southampton, New York. I'm calling this meeting of the 9th of March, 2020 to order. Do I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Is that a second?
Yes.
Aye.
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 Before we begin, I'd like to make it clear that I expect everyone, the board and the public, to act and speak with civility in this room. Anyone who wants to speak should sign in. Do we have a piece of...
I didn't sign, I didn't. I know who was anyway.
Oh, okay, never mind for tonight, but in future, everyone should sign in. And if you have materials, please put them on this table facing us so our videographer can pick it up. Now I'd like to introduce our board for tonight. To my left, Robert Coburn, Sarah Latham. To my right, Jeff Broadleib, Alice Cooley, our counsel, Charles Styler, our videographer, and Antoinette Edwards is our recording secretary. Mr. Studenroth is not coming tonight because we don't really have any historic items that he needs to discuss with us. So let's begin. First, minutes approval, February 10th, 2020, and February 24th, 2020. I think we have, do we have to do them separately?
We could do them together.
No, separately. For
do 'em separately.
February 10th,
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for February 10th, 2020.
I second the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
And I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for February 24th, 2020.
and I second that motion.
Aye.
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 Next, written decisions. Robert Lohman, 28 Bowden Square. Did everyone have a chance to look at this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we accept the written decision of council and approve the written decision of council for Robert Lohman at 28 Bowden Square.
Second.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye. Aye.
great. Next, no driveway gates, driveway gates non-historic. Robert J. Ciccarelli Jr., 157 Wickapog Road, driveway gates.
Linda Riley, 235 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, for the applicant, Dr. Ciccarelli. We have, this was on your agenda the last meeting, and with respect to comments that were made by the board at that meeting, the plan has been revised. Most notably, it's been revised to provide for 2.5 inches of space between the 2-inch pickets in response to the request from the board, and also the height of the fence was lowered in response. The column will be 7 feet. The gate will be, for the most part, 6 feet, and that seems to be consistent with a lot of what appears in the community. I was glad to hear you say right at the beginning that it's not in a historic district. I didn't know if there had been some confusion about that, so I prepared some things that
Well, there is a historic district right next to it, but that's not in it.
That's correct.
Right.
There is one down the street.
Right.
And so because there was some discussion at the last hearing, which I watched on the tape, about whether or not this gate that's proposed is harmonious with the other gates in the area, I did a little research. I'm going to pass down a sort of handwritten. I put together some things from the tax map, and the yellow is just the historic district, And we are quite a bit to the west, I'm sorry, of the historic district. I put the addresses on the top of the lots. So our address is 157, which, as you can see, is between Narrow Lane and Old Town. It's right across the street, literally across the street from the Old Town development. And right behind it is Cobblefield development. So you can see where our property is, 157. There are a number of gates on that block. I marked, pretty much staying that side of, for the most part. I noted every gate that is on either side of Wickapog. I didn't go off of Wickapog much. And came up with a number of gates that every single thing that you see there that says gate, in fact, has a gate. They don't all have ARB approval, but quite a few of them do. And the ones that don't, I would argue they may be pre-existing, they may be illegal, I really don't know. But if you're going to talk about what's in harmony with the surroundings, I think it's important to note that there are these gates everywhere. So I have made copies of the ones that were ARB approved and pictures of those gates, and I'm going to pass them along. Here's the one at 107, which is right on the same block, just a couple of doors down. It had ARB approval. You can see it here. I'm going to pass these down so that you, and make them part of the record.
Do they have the addresses on them, Linda?
Pardon me?
Do they have the addresses on them?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
They're on the ARB approvals and they're on the photographs. Both. So that's one, and all of these are higher than 6 feet. All are higher than 6 feet. Directly across the street on the Keene development. The Keene development has lots and lots of big gates. I didn't bother to document all of them, just the two that are directly across the street. This is 6 Old Town, which is directly across, literally across the street from Dr. Ciccarelli. And that is their gate. Here is the ARB approval on that. Some of these, you'll notice, don't even have 50% open area. But maybe the board has just gotten, we're offering the 50% open area. So that's we're not discussing that, but I'm just.
We have no enforcement of, we might say we.
Well, it's approved that way.
We're not driving around in a truck giving them
Yeah.
tickets, so I don't
Okay.
know.
Well, my point, you get my point. Here's 437 Wickapog, which again has a 7-foot high gate, which is higher actually than we're proposing, and ARB approval. I'm going to pass those down. I also have, also across the street is 7 Old Town, which is actually on Wickapog Road, and getting myself confused here. This is 7. Lot 7. I think this may be one where they came in for approval after the fact, because there wasn't really a plan in the ARB file. It was a photograph, but it's stamped approved. And there are 2 of these gates on that property. I'll pass down a couple.
These houses.
And then I have a whole bunch of photos, which are going to be less interesting to you, I think, because they're not ARB approved, but they're all on Wikipog, and they're all, I think, more aggressive than what he's proposing to do. And again, my point is just that what he's proposing is harmonious. I want to talk for a minute about his actual lot and his actual circumstances. I have photos here that I wish they came out a little bit clearer, but they're not too bad. I'm going to explain to you what I'm showing. This is from inside his lot, and behind it is there's one taken from outside, from the street side. But taken from inside his lot, he put a 7-foot measuring stick here in the area where the gate is going to go. So you can see actually part of the columns actually will be behind these cypress trees, which are 14 feet high. And you can see that the sides of the columns will actually not even be visible. I took this photo from the front side because I thought it was important to see what is going on in the front of that property. There is a slope there, and his privet head. There's the cypress trees, which are huge, and the gate's going to be sort of behind them, right in this area here, where the cobblestone ends. There's a very high privet hedge, but it's set back on the property. It's way beyond his property line. The fence will be a little bit forward of that, but again, it's about a 3-foot slope there, which you can see in the photograph, which means that in terms of how the gate will appear as you're going down the street, it's really going to sit kind of low on the street compared to a lot of what's around it. The gates are going to have a special feature so that they can open inward, open the right way. They have to open inward, right? They have to. I don't know.
We're only how they look, not how they open.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to
They
let you.
probably have to open outward if there's a
Because the
slope,
slope
because it would
is-
hit
No,
the
they're going to
snag.
open in because they're going to have a special hinge that's going to sort of
good.
Raise them up.
Where's the
raise
mouth?
them up a little bit. That's the part I wanted to catch with you.
I couldn't
It's going to
figure-
have a special hinge so that it stays low, but follows the slope. So a great deal of thought went into all of this, and some compromise, because he heard what you had to say last time.
We understand that. That was very nice. The
Okay, well, if
compromise that you heard what we said. Thank you.
Okay, and, but he doesn't wish to compromise in terms of the height any further because of the situation he's got there with deer, which are coming in from the driveway, and which are causing him a lot of problem. I have photographs of damage to the lot. And it's really the reason why he wants to have something certainly higher than a 4-foot fence is to keep the deer out because of the damage it's been doing. Not to show all his neighbors what a big ego he has or how much gate he can afford or anything like that. It's not to show off. It's for a purpose. I have lots more I can say, and
Well, let's see what the board members say, maybe.
okay.
Cut to the chase, as they say. How about
Yeah.
you, Rob? Well, I'm happy to say, I find this to be a pretty good compromise. And so I appreciate that. That's all I have to say.
I agree that it is a good compromise. My only concern was how he was going to actually open the thing on that slope, and that's none of my business, really. It was just practical. Thank you.
Okay. Linda, like you, I did an inventory of the entire street. And jumping ahead, yes, it's on the spectrum of gates, it's on the high end. However, along with my fellow board members, I appreciate the compromise. There's one gate that's 7 feet, that's the highest, but most of, I'm sorry, the one you pointed out is 7.6. But most of the others, because I measured them each from the ground up, is maybe between 5 feet and 6'6". So this is on the higher end of the spectrum, but acceptable. So you've got a yes, so don't say anything more as an attorney, okay? So what I would offer you, Doctor, as a neighbor, I know you're concerned about the deer. That's not our issue, and you've got my vote on the plan here. But as a neighbor, you're going to continue to have the deer problem. If you want to look about how to resolve or solve the deer problem, go down to the end of the street, the eastern end of the street. Look at the Halsey and the Fowler Farms. They have 8-foot farm quality wire fencing, 4-inch squares.
I have pictures of it.
Around their entire property. That's what keeps out deer. The other thing that keeps out deer, and by the way, this is the view.
Yeah, I have
of that
pictures.
property.
There's 3
That
sets
keeps
of them.
out deer. This keeps out deer. When you have a cattle walk in front of a driveway, cattle crate, that keeps out deer. Sometimes. What will not keep out deer, and this is your property from the western side, is a 4-foot split rail fence with no hedges. They jump over that, you and I would jump over a puddle. Again, I'm only offering this as neighborly advice. If you're concerned about the deer, having a gate, whether it's 4 feet, 6 feet, maybe at 8 feet, it may keep them out of the front, but not out of the side. And deer like meadows, that's what they love. They'd rather walk in a meadow from one meadow to the next. So they're going to come onto your neighbor's property unless you do what the Halseys and the Fowlers do.
Well, he's not going to do what they did. The house.
Well, he doesn't have to. Again, Linda, this is just
Yeah.
neighborly advice.
Okay.
You've got the vote.
Thank you.
All
right.
So, and I would just, if I could, you have my vote as well. Thank you for the
Let's
changes
vote.
you've made. I just want to say, the issue here, which I just want to get on the record, is that we are charged with keeping a look and feel to the village.
Right.
Historically, driveway gates were not part of a look and feel of the village. And so whether it's this board or maybe direction from the Board of Trustees or from the Planning Board, this issue probably should be raised a little more. And I think there are different parts of the village. If we started to see, I live on Hill Street, if we started to see gates on Hill Street and Elm Street and some of the more dense, closer into the heart of the village streets, we'd be turning this community into a gated community, which is not what it was historically and not the look and feel that most people have. I think you're in a transitional area that's a little more rural. There are gates, but I don't want the fact that there are gates in some neighborhoods to be the reason why other people get gates, because they're, frankly, whether it was approved or not in the past, in some cases, I think for a lot of us, and given the feedback we get from the community, there are a lot of people who are very sensitive to this issue in a negative way. And it's not that they don't want people to be either fancy or protected or live the way they want to live. It has to do with their view of the look and feel of the village, which is our charge to protect. And we're in a gray area. It's one of the things we wrestle with and that we're asked to give judgment on. So with all of that said, I appreciate the compromises you've made and wish you luck with your gates.
Thank you very much.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the gates for Robert Ciccarelli Jr. at 157 Woodstock Road.
I second the motion.
Aye.
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 Done.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Good to see you, Linda.
You're right, it was good to see you, Linda. Next, driveway to gates historic, we have none. Public hearings, non-historic. James Bracken, 20 Downs Path.
Hi.
Construct accessory garage. Huh,
You guys approved this. We spoke about it already.
yeah, we didn't approve.
You did not approve it. Okay.
right.
Conceptually, we
discussed
thought we were
We
heading in the right
conceptually
direction.
discussed it, and I was just telling them I'm their neighbor, and we're putting in cattle grids. So, because we don't like gates either.
Good.
And as a village resident, I don't like gates.
So you got an approval for...
So we got, the issue was last time the ZBA had been canceled right before this
Right.
meeting, and so we were on the agenda with the ZBA written decision. The ZBA written decision has come through
It's in the file.
in the file with green giants blocking it, which is fine. And so the plan hasn't really changed since we talked about it. 750 square foot garage.
No changes to the architecture?
No changes to the architecture, similar, or it's basically using the same from the house. Everything is from the house.
Right, from what you said before.
But the plans you presented to us last time
Have
weren't
not
changed?
changed
in
at
any
all,
Location?
So
Okay.
does
Nothing
anyone
has
want to
changed.
discuss this further?
I don't feel I need to.
Jeff?
No.
I'm sorry, I'm Kathleen Cooper, 20 Downs Path. I'm James Bracken's wife.
The sweater isn't a threat, is it?
It depends if you don't approve it. Just kidding. No.
I think during our current medical crisis in
Yeah.
the United States, you better retire that for a little while. We got enough trouble.
It's slightly ironic, I like it.
It's an
It might be great.
Sorry.
Sorry, unwarranted. So, I'm making a motion to approve James Bracken, 20 Downs Path, construct accessory garage.
Second, aye?
Aye.
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 And there
Wow.
will never be any gates, I promise, on the whole property
You were very
ever.
nice about going to the ZBA. I appreciated how you did not fight with us, because we can't help it either.
Okay, I
This is a
understand.
dotting of
Makes
i's
it a
and
lot
crossing of
smoother.
t's thing.
So good luck with your house.
Thank you very much.
And may the cattle work.
Yeah, made the cattle
I don't
herd
think
work.
any of it works.
I agree. But I also have a dog who
That works.
That works.
My dogs
on
work.
guard. I promise.
I have a friend who fenced in everything in Bridgehampton, and when the deer found a way in, they couldn't get out, and they died on the property.
Ew.
Two of them.
And
No
they get
source
stuck
of
in
water.
those grates, too.
What's that?
They get stuck in the grates, and
And
it's
Right.
gruesome.
Or they jump in your pool. It's a mess.
And they break the law.
Next, Parry LLC, 23 Culver Street, construct one-story additions and accessory garage. Site plan review pending with the planning board.
Good evening, board members. CMX Sami, architect and
Are these
owner.
the same?
These are the same plans.
You have affidavits?
Yes, I have affidavits
Oh,
here
good
for
thinking.
you,
I always forget.
mailing and posting. This is, there you go.
No, it's just far enough that no one can reach anyone. It's just fabulous. Okay, let's put that in the front. Okay,
Okay, so property is located on the north side of Culver Street in the Village Business District. It's even though zoned for village business, the CO is both for residents on the ground floor and office space on the second floor. As I said, I'm the owner of the property. My office is on the second floor. My daughter's apartment on the first floor. We are proposing, or I'm proposing, basically refurbishment of this building with some minor small additions and a garage, expanded garage. The additions are all on the ground level. On the ground floor, the office level is not getting changed at all. The ground level additions are in order of from the street going into the depth of the lot, front porch, a one-story addition to the living room area, and a one-story bedroom addition to the back of the property, a trellis connecting the building to an expanded garage on the west side that spans north-south of the property. We are proposing a complete new siding and new windows on the property, on this building. And of course, landscaping. We are proposing a new nitrate system for the septic and brick, bluestone terrace in the back of the property.
didn't we have this house, is this house, because how old is this house?
This house, there's the original portion of it, which is the closest to the street, dates back to 1875-ish or so, the oldest section of it.
And didn't this come up before us for some reason, not in the last 5 years or not?
In the last 5
Because I
years, it has
knew-
not been in front
No?
of you. No, it has not been in front of you in the past 5 years. I purchased this property about 20 years ago. I've been having my office there ever since. I have not done much work, which if you walk by, you can see it's not in very good condition. But it's time now, basically, to refurbish this building, bring it back to basically the standards of the village in that sense. I have numerous things I can discuss with you about if you're interested, but maybe as far as the precedents, as far as what's in the street, why I have decided what I'm doing and so forth, if you need any expansion on any
I'm
of these things.
confused about such a big garage, actually.
What's the confusion?
Well,
Why is it so big?
why is it so big? There you go, Rob. That's one of my it houses like 7 cars?
6 cars.
6 cars?
The house has 6 cars. It runs east to west. There's a number of reasons why it's shaped as is. First of all, the functional aspect of it is that I do have some older cars that I would like to store it over there. So this is not going to be an active garage. It's going to be a passive garage. That's as far as the function's concerned. As far as the architecture and the in relationship to the fabric of the neighborhood, when I purchased this property, I was sandwiched between Yanni Motors and Hall Chevrolet.
Right.
And one of the things I liked about it was that it had this industrial flavor of 2 CMU buildings, garage buildings on either side of me. In the village business district. It had much more of an urban feel to it as far as the density in that area. With the exception of these 2 properties on either side of me, pretty much everything else on Culver Street is residential property. Unfortunately, I did attend 2 planning board meetings in the years when both of these properties on either side of me were being redeveloped, where these buildings were demolished, and obviously property owners wanted maximum retail on Hill Street, and I ended up with huge parking lots on either side of me. As you know, Culver Street, actually it's Culver Hill Street, so it's a sloped site. I have retaining walls on both sides of my property. Not tall retaining walls, but yes, I do have, and I have pictures if you want to get a better idea for it. I'm exposed, basically. I'm sitting in the middle of a parking lot, old residential building, sitting on parking lots on 2 sides. So what I'm trying to do is that also provide a little bit of a screening. I'd like to basically, and also the fabric of Culver Street being a residence, or pretty much more denser, with these parking lots on either side of me, I'm basically thrown into suburbia in that sense. So by bringing a garage to the street, almost short of to the street, not to the street, I'm basically filling up the mass on my side of the street as much as possible to have representation of architecture on Culver Street. Same thing goes for the porch that I'm proposing. Pretty much 90%, if not all, actually all of them. All of the residences on Culver Street do have porches. And I'm reintroducing that. And I'm pretty sure this building at one point had a porch, because the second floor bay windows are basically kind of hanging there. And I'm pretty sure at one point there was a porch underneath it that was brought down. So I'm reintroducing that in line with the rest of the residences on Culver Street, and also to bring again more architecture onto Culver Street, which on my side is missing on either side of me, a huge parking lot. So that's another reason why I'm introducing this elongated. And as far as precedents, you'd be interested in this one. At that same location, dating 1897, we had the stables, the Fritz stables,
Look at that.
spanning north-south from Hill Street all the way on my property to Culver Street, right at that location where I'm proposing this garage. So if anything, I'm cutting this garage to half the size.
You're reestablishing the stables, but
I don't know
smaller.
what you're going to do with the horses then, seeing
That's
that.
as good an argument as you could put on that.
Yeah.
Of course, there were no other buildings around it.
No other buildings around it, no, and there's a windmill on top of it. They were ahead of their times. But again, the Culver Street had the precedent of having these stables and garages. This is the earlier version of it, and then later on, as I said, both Halls and Yanni Motors had garages on either side of me, and unfortunately, they were all removed and replaced with nothing. So this is, being that on the ground floor I have a residence, and there's a very minute small backyard, if you want to call it, over there. By introducing this garage over there, it creates a little bit of a privacy and enclosure for the open space, outdoor open space.
Board members?
My view is, and I think we're saying the same thing, perhaps differently, whether the garage, you're taking, I mean, they're different, you're picking and pulling from different times and periods to essentially create a lot of density on a small piece of property. And if it is in fact moving residential, then you're taking it back by jamming, and there's no value judgment in that, but putting a lot of assets on the property. And as such, the placement is out of whack for me. I'm not looking to go back to the 30s and 40s in that area when it was populated by garages, by putting in a six-car garage. And the connectors and everything else. So, CMAC, it looks like, to me, just a lot of assets on a small property on a street of...
It's in the Village Business District.
Correct. This is, Jeff, that's exactly what I want to bring to your attention. That this is not a residential neighborhood.
I understand, but at the same token, our charge in the non-historic area has to do with the placement of the buildings, the dwellings and the buildings on the property. So I'm giving you, you're coming here for a review.
I was concerned, and then I was told that the zoning, that it's village business, it's not residential.
I'm not arguing.
And that they have the right to cover 70% of the lot.
I'm not arguing well, what's the right, because if everything was totally dependent on what's right, then we would have no purpose being here. It's a matter of what this board approves. Now, if I'm in the minority, so be it, but when I look at that, it looks to me to be an over-dense use and placement of buildings that is, in my view, disharmonious. I'm happy to look at it again, but this is a review, so you're not asking for our vote. So, perhaps on subsequent reviews, maybe I'll think differently, but right now, it looks extremely...
Is this just a review?
Well, that's what it says.
Well, we are in front, you can't, yes, I am in front of the planning board. And technically,
So I
you
think-
cannot vote on this until the planning board
Correct.
has basically voted on this property. Two things, Jeff, I want to bring to your attention. One of the main reasons why I purchased this property was its location in the Village Business District. Village Business District definitely has a much higher density. If you go around Main Street, Jobs Lane, these are the densest parts of our village. I purchased this property when it was even more dense than today. Just in the past 20 years, I've lost density around myself. I would like you to take a look at these pictures. This is my driveway going down facing west. That's the retaining wall on the old the Sumerian property. This is the view from the other side. They have their garbage dumpster on my property over there. The 70% density that we're talking about, I am far below that, and all my neighbors, both sides and to the north of me, have much higher densities, to the extent that the ones that are on either side of me are practically sitting on property lines, with the exception of the parking. So when we're talking about density, we're talking about densities of 95% plus on properties around me. So if anything, me being the only quote-unquote residential building over there, I'm an anomaly as far as density. And also being an architect, I don't have a problem with density. I've worked with all sorts of densities. Density by itself is not a negative thing for me. How do you deal with it as far as its planning and its location? And I went through numerous renderings of how to work out that little backyard that I have would have some semblance of mini backyard for that ground level residence and protection from the neighboring parking lots.
Because, so in the east and the west of your property are parking lots?
Are parking lots.
Right, I
And
actually
let me
have
show you actually.
partaken of parking
Let me show you actually these.
on the side of your property on many occasions.
Here's a Google map
Okay.
of my property throughout the years. Let me see how can I.
Which is the current one?
So
See
the
that?
current one is this one over here, and we're going back in time as move to your right. So presently, this is my property here, with parking lot on the east side and parking lot on the west side. All to my north, it's pretty much 95 to 100% density. All along there. Both of these properties on east and west of mine were garage buildings that were demolished. So I had much higher densities when I purchased my property 20 years. So if you go back in time to 2007, you can see Yanni Motors to the east of me. You can see how it sits smack on my property edge as far as density. And this goes back. This is the best I could find from 2001, where you could see that also this white building over here enlarged at this point. Let me see, Culver Street is in this direction, yes, over there. That's the Hall Chevrolet garage that was also same scale as what I'm proposing on the west of my property, on the property line. Again, I would, Jeff, ask you to visit the site.
Yeah.
Because once you
And
take a look at that, take a look at the retaining walls that are on either side of me, there's nothing imposing on my neighbors. If anything, it strengthens the fabric of Culver Street, which has been eroded due to these parking lots. Okay. And I went in front of the planning board, made an argument that if you are proposing such densities, I'm not suggesting the reduction of densities on either side of me, but to introduce some smaller densities on edge of Culver Street at a depth of 20 feet so that there would be some street architecture, and then sandwich the parking in between by shaving 10 to 15 feet from the back of the properties on Hill Street. And obviously that was commercially not viable.
Okay, well, I surely will look at it again, and just to be clear in the terminology, it's more an issue of the massing. I mean, density may be a technical term in terms of the percentage and stuff like that, but it's the visual massing that's the qualitative judgmental part that I would be looking at. So, I mean, I will revisit the property, but as I see it presented here and as I saw it in the folder, my view was the massing and the placement of all the buildings and the 6-car garage was a lot of mass on a little bit of space.
I think that the flat side. The the west side of the garage is scary, kind of.
Is it so long?
So long.
It's so long and monotonous. Honestly, if you just cut a little bit off of it, it would be so much nicer.
I mean, I would
I know you
strongly
wanted to be
suggest
so
all.
big, but I just feel like
visit the
that,
site.
the rest of it, I think is okay, but that giant garage thing. So for instance, so when you look at this, I hear what you're saying.
G11.
Well, yeah, but I like it with the whole back of this thing. So that if your backyard were a little bigger, I realize though that it does front, on either side, what you didn't show is that there's a parking lot.
Correct.
So you're screening yourself, is that correct? But I just feel that the sort of, the actual long, do you go on?
In no way I'm imposing any structure onto that parking lot. If anything, first of all, by the way, as I approach the depth of my property, I'm dropping the ridge height. So the building halfway down starts dropping its height too.
But I don't think you owe the parking lot anything, CMAC. I mean,
Say that again? Oh, I don't owe the parking lot anything, but again, from the
Honestly.
perspective of, again, massing, when we talk about massing, because that's the so-called my little backyard, I don't want a tall building sitting back there. And by the way, I have a right to build that garage at 35-foot height.
yeah.
Again, I would like to emphasize that we are in the village business district. 70% lot coverage, and all of these structures, they're not considered as accessory structures, but any kind of a structure could go up to 35 feet. Actually, in certain instances, up to between 235 feet separations, up to 40 feet, based on the village business district. This is sticking to a 16-foot height on Culver Street, which is a standard garage size. And the length of it, if anybody is really exposed to that, it's myself. And I've broken it down by introducing the trellis in the center and introducing the rhythm of the windows, the dropping of the ridge height. And on the other side, again, go to the site and take a look at that retaining wall and the plants and trees that have been planted on the other side, with the dumpster, garbage dumpster on the other side of it. And then I want to hear your thoughts on that.
All right.
So I would comment that in the context of a commercial property, I think this is better than what we might otherwise expect from possibly other owners, theoretical owners. And I think you have a fine line to dance, which you don't have to, but you seem to want to do, which is to utilize some of the benefits of being a commercial property, but to not only maintain but reinforce for the street some of the more residential feel and upgrade the residential sort of look and feel. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to do that. There are a couple details that I have questions with, because at the end of the day, the only thing I'm struggling with is not the concept or your right to have that big garage, but, and certainly in plan and on renderings, it fights a little bit of the residential feel from Culver Street. Although I don't think you'll see the depth of the garage from Culver Street necessarily, so I understand that. But I guess the comment that I would make is that I would prefer to see that garage another 5 or 12 feet back from the road.
Back from Culver.
Back from Culver. That because right now it comes out to the same depth as the porch, basically, more or less. And you create a courtyard there, and I'm not sure that's bad necessarily, but I just think that, to me, it's just that last bit of depth near the road that makes it, that muddies the waters in terms of trying to create the residential look that I think you're trying to create.
So let me just share one more piece of experience living there all these times and working there, is that Culver Street is relatively a quiet street. It's used as a shortcut from the residences further east to the village. The only time that it gets slightly busy is either during the parades or occasionally when the cultural center has certain activities. It spills from the Pond Lane to Culver Street. And when that happens, I get blocked. My driveway to that garage gets blocked. So that was another one of those things that a previous owner actually had put these signs, these standard signs that don't block the driveway and so forth, which I hate to rely on something of that nature. But basically by pushing my garage as close as possible to the street was to have a presence that would stop people from parking in front of that driveway. And on numerous occasions, I've had that issue to the extent that even though I would prefer to park there because it's shaded and so forth, I don't park there because I get blocked. That has happened to me a number of times.
But that logic would mean that, I'm not saying you're doing this, but you're asking the board to compromise.
No, I'm not.
Well, let me just finish my thought. The logic would be compromise your architectural judgment in order to solve an enforcement issue. And to me, that doesn't make sense.
No,
I appreciate your argument, but it doesn't make sense.
If you consider that, in my opinion, I don't see this as a compromise in architecture to rebuilding.
Well, you just said, Seema, that one of the reasons you wanted to put the garage up front was to make it present so people wouldn't park there. So the corollary to that is you're
you're not here to approve something on the premise of, oh, you're not going to have anybody parking there, so let's sign it. And that's not the reason why I presented this as such.
Okay.
I mean, I would not design something on that premise anyways. I'm just giving
So
you
then that means then you're okay with moving it back 5 feet?
No. I mean, not that I'm okay. I don't want to.
You said you want to house your cars.
There's the first reason I brought was a functional reason, which I didn't try to hide that by making it the last reason. But then I'm an architect, so and this is my problem. So if anybody cares about the architecture, it's myself.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I didn't see this as a compromise. If anything, as I said, one of the reasons I purchased that property, which I really liked it, was the flavor and the fabric of the Culver Street. It's not anything like the rest of the village when I purchased it. It was more of a, if you want to call it, the industrial Southampton, which was the garages and the stables earlier on and so forth. And to me, and the proximity of it being right at the edge of the village business and not in the heart of it, and not in the edge, in the center of the residential, basically straddle these two things.
Monkeyed with, kind of.
It was auto land and good to be auto land.
Correct.
And then things got built that I'm sure were not that are not that architecturally pleasing.
So, and I hear what you're saying about your thought is that by having the garage come forward, among other things, it signals to people with garage doors right there that you can't park here.
I mean, moving it 5 feet back will not stop that signaling. It still is as a presence. So yes, if 5 foot would.
If there was a way to to basically have a driveway, so take maybe more than 5 feet, but the equivalent of one car length, and paint the surface, the road surface, hash the road surface, which they do for the church and for other places as no parking. It just, to me, that would help because. Otherwise, that side of the property does look more commercial to me, with a building that if someone chooses to, they see goes basically all the way down the property line on the west side and comes right out essentially within a few feet of the property line on the front. It's nice that it's on the side of the property, but conceptually it fights the overall residential look that I think you're going for. I only had one other question, which was I'm curious as to the treatment of the roof and the gables on the two gables you're introducing. You have a gable there right now, one already, I think. It looks like you're raising that up, changing the roof angle a little bit, and it's almost like a hip roof on those gables, and then a panel front.
Shingle. I mean,
It's all shingled.
It's all shingled. Roof
all
shingled.
shingled,
It's all
okay.
roof shingled. So,
Got it. But there's a vertical portion
but,
to it.
yes, it basically stands up.
So I come to that because I think that would be those would be very prominent features, particularly the one on the main form of the house on the east side, really prominent features. And I guess I'm wondering, is there a precedent in the village? I think it sounds attractive, so I'm not predisposed against it, but I'm trying to envision what it looks like. Is it on a building that you can point us to?
So let me give you my thought process of how I came, because I tried many different things on top of those. Sure. First of all, these pair of bay windows on the side of the building do not have much of a roof right now. I have existing drawings and existing photos in the file. So I wanted to, and this building has been added on to kind of in a rambling manner throughout the time. So I wanted to give a little bit of a prominence and identity to the front of these buildings, like similar to everything else on that street that has some prominent pediment and so forth. Yep. But at the same time, I did not want to start introducing trim and painted trim and white. I wanted to be quiet as much as possible. Okay. Hence, making it basically out of all roof shingles. By the way, the roof shingles are going to be all cedar shingles. Mm-hmm. So in order to avoid introducing painted trim up there, which would be more prominent if I were to.
So there's no paneling, no trim?
No paneling, no trim.
You get to an inflection point where the roof angle becomes a vertical.
Correct.
It's a transition with
so I do have the architecture there, but it's understated. In that sense.
Out of curiosity, do you have to flash that joint to make the...
No, what happens is that your shingle guy basically steam the shingle at that point. And
you bend two or three courses.
You do introduce some flashing underneath it, but they steam the shingle so it would be one continuous.
So there's a slight curve maybe at the bottom of it. Okay.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the thought that's gone into it, and it sounds like a good result. I'll just reiterate my question. Is there, because I think that's going to be very prominent.
This detail is very much detail of historic shingle style details, where basically you don't have, you have continuity of shingle. Usually when it comes to bay windows, for instance, the shingle kind of gradually grows over the top of it rather than having truncated and separated distinctly. So that's characteristic of the shingle style. And since I'm doing all shingled roof over there, I kept to that kind of language. And again, the premise of my design was to not highlight that higher elevation architecture as much with painted trim. I wanted it to be quiet.
And what was my last quick question, then I'll turn it back over to others, but what was your thought on, I know they probably weren't original, but on removing the shutters from the...
I may put them back on the front. I don't have, first of all, those shutters are plastic shutters hanging there. Shutters to me, it's like, okay, it's the next level of, I don't have anything against shutters, and I may put shutters over there. It dresses up the building a bit more, and with that porch, introducing shutters. Of course, the shutters won't be operable, and a lot of times I do not like to introduce shutters when you don't have consistency of application, so that certain windows that are wider or threesome, you won't put it. So in some cases, I stick to the original. So for instance, in this scenario, if I were to introduce shutters, it would be only on the 1865 portion of the building, which is the one closest to the street. There's one bay window which can't have a shutter. There's one window on the second floor and 3 windows on the ground floor underneath the porch. So if I could introduce shutters on the ground level, and if that's something that you desire, I have no problem with it. And again, going back to the discussion of massing and so forth, I have a hedge in front of that building. And right now, actually, this time of the year, with the light and with all the hedges down to their basics, you can see more of the depth of the yard. But during summertime, there's a wall of green, with the exception of the driveway and my entrance to the office building.
That's actually too bad because the old house is a cute house.
Yes, so to
And-
that extent, I'm expanding both of the openings, which basically are reflective on the spacing of the columns on the porch. So each one of those openings to the east and the west are going to be widened to reflect the base of the porch. And I want to drop where the porch is, drop the height of the privets. So that when you're standing, you can actually see outside. So there's going to be more of a presence of the building, which is sitting closest to the street. But the rest, which is the courtyard, is going to have a 7 foot or so high, 8 foot high privet, which you won't see that garage at all.
So, where are we, Board?
So just to also, as far as where you are on this thing, I have to go in front of the planning board on April 6th. I've been
it's a
in front
month
of
from
two work sessions. The consultant to the board deemed no major impact on the neighborhood. The only issues that the only two things that they requested from me, one was a design of the curb of the driveway to the garage, which I have. Actually, I'll submit that to you right here. And also a parking count, which I did that too, and I submitted to Kathy and to the board. Here's the curb cut. But besides that, basically, the boards didn't have any issues with any of the items proposed.
I would agree with that, except that the board did not make a secret declaration yet. It
Yes,
was
correct.
recommended.
Correct. I have the document that was submitted to me. I can provide that to the file from the planning board, which on the SECRA says the proposed action is classified as an unlisted action according to SECRA, and an EAF has been submitted for review, and based on upon review and preparation of Part 2 EAF, no significant adverse impacts have been identified, and adoption of a negative declaration is appropriate. This should occur before closing the public hearing on this matter. This is on the planning board stance.
Right. So, you know, I have issues with the garage. I do remember the hulking two car dealerships that existed before they got knocked down, which then went to the building that some people, 1950s replica building that's built in 1950 that's at the corner, that curved building.
Yeah, now.
Yeah.
I'll be in
So
front
that's
of
the
you next
last,
meeting.
and I did not vote to save that since it was a 1950s version of a 1930s building, which I thought was
At least
not
it's
meeting the code. But someone is, so there were these big, tall, showroomy, and then back end where the car, people, yeah, where you got your car fixed. Let's just face it. And the
Auto lane.
doors were always open. So in a sense, at first, I was completely freaked out by the garage, but now I'm thinking there were garages. That's what I'm thinking. So I need to think about it probably some more, and also the parking lot situation is pretty amazing. I'm sorry, God, what luck you have there. So I could see why you'd want a big, long thing, so you didn't have to see the lights and hear the driving in the parking lot. That
And the
part, I
garbage
think,
truck and the garbage dumping, which the UPS store and so forth.
oh, it must be fantastic. So,
But strongly recommend board members to
went-
come and visit the
okay.
site.
Yeah, I'd like to look at
All
that.
all right, so
Work with you if you need.
let's adjourn. Would it be okay? So are you asking us to adjourn to our next
So the
meeting?
question is that today, this is a public hearing for the ARB. I'm scheduled for April 6th.
So we have it every 2 weeks.
Yes, I'm going to be here next meeting.
So there you go.
So at the next meeting,
So we,
hopefully, we'll
and what, so are we allowed, we can approve it without their, we
No,
write
you should-
an
you should-
advisory?
You should wait, but I just want to clarify that on April 6th, he
It won't
needs
be
to kind of
finished.
have his plan in place.
Oh, he
So-
does, so we
so-
have to,
I mean, otherwise, the planning board is going to have to keep his public hearing open.
correct.
so at our next meeting, we should try to have it,
You should have a consensus. I think it would be helpful for everyone.
So either
the
be
29th.
prepared to approve or to maybe send a letter, would that suffice to the, I mean, I would like to think about this some more. I'd like you to reflect on some of the comments you've heard and see if there's any amendments or changes, modifications you want to consider or would consider. And then we should have a discussion at our next meeting. It feels to me like there's some consensus, but it's not entire consensus and still some
Right, but-
remaining concerns.
right. I mean, I'm sort of two minds, but I'm not completely against it at this point.
I'd like to go back and look.
Okay, well,
Okay.
we can't do that, yeah, we couldn't decide now, I'm
No.
just, but if we had other ideas, well, let's see what happens.
But given
We
that
can't
it's
help it.
not in the historic district.
It's not, it's in a
Right.
village, the village
in the
business part
village
really threw
business
me
district.
for a loop.
Yeah, but it's not a contributing structure. It is built before 1926, so, but you're
The
not,
original portion of it, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think
correct.
there was once a discussion about
Adding, yeah.
that it had been, I do remember parts of it, something, that it's sort of historic, but it's not intact.
but it strikes me that, given at least recent precedent in the village, another owner of this property could be walking in, or Mr. Semi himself could be walking in to say, I want to tear this down and I want to build strip retail. I mean, it has the right to do
Right,
that. Right.
it's got friends at
Effectively.
strip retail right nearby.
Right, which would be unfortunately consistent with what
Right.
surrounds his property now.
And I'm updating also the new modern nitrate system as far as my septic, which is not required, but
Well, I love Culver Street. I like Mrs. Beck's porch. I love the whole look of that, the sort of weird vernacular.
yeah.
And there's a few anomalies over there, too,
It
by
has
the
a f-
way.
It has sort of a feel of like an upstate village, where
Right.
there's a real mixture of
A sort of
residents.
farmy
and-
village
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah,
some-
and the retaining walls on the other side are not typical for our village. It has its own
Yeah.
look.
No, it does. Well, it's a hill.
Yeah.
That's right.
There are hardly any. Pond Lane has another one with the Elihu Route property. All right, so are you asking us for an adjournment to our next meeting? Motion?
Well, I will make a motion that we approve the applicant's request to adjourn to our next hearing.
Second?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
So we'll see you in 2 weeks, CMAC. Thank you very
And
much.
if you do want me to join the tour of the site and walk you through the property and so forth, by all means, I'm
Just
available.
call your, okay, that's nice. Maybe we do. We
What
can
sort of
do.
cars do you have?
We can't all,
Kind of
shut
cars?
Some old
after the
Mercedes.
meeting. Here, put this back.
We'll talk more about that.
All right. But only 2 of us at a time could go on together because of the sunshine law. How about that?
Open meetings law.
Yes. So,
Should I submit these Google Maps and straight to the file?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it'd be actually helpful.
okay. Next, public hearings, historic. We have Thomas and Meredith Joyce, which is adjourned until 4/13/2020.
Correct.
And BLC Hillside Investments LLC, which is pending a ZBA decision. Now, I'm going to ask Alice to go over what she thinks is required.
Okay. So BLC Hillside Investments did apply to the zoning board to put the barn/carriage house/garage in the rear of the property as the board preferred. They're going to be heard on March 26th. The board did agree at our last meeting that we would submit a letter in support of that application because it's the board's preferred location. So I just wanted to ask the board to adopt an oral resolution authorizing me to write that letter on your behalf, which I'm happy to circulate before I submit. But some of the issues that we discussed was preserving the orientation as it exists in the carriage house, and that the historic fabric of the village was enhanced by keeping the spatial relationship between the house and the structure.
And then we just got something from our historic consultant that reaffirmed those two issues.
Correct.
As Plan B.
So I'll make a motion that we ask our council to draft a letter in this regard on 132 South Main Street, circulate that draft for comments to the board, and then to finalize it at your discretion to submit to the zoning board.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Second, anyone?
Second?
Aye.
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 That being said,
Does anyone know, by the way, if the architect friend from Nashville is okay after their storms?
what?
The
Oh,
architect and the owners, I believe, are based in Nashville.
nothing. I know nothing.
All right. Anyway,
So,
out of curiosity.
and I just have one, I was watching Channel 22, which is my downfall, because every time I watch, I find something else. And I noticed that I felt some meetings, not ours in particular, actually, there was just, some of the applicants' counsel or the applicants went on, or the objectants. And Alice mentioned to me that in some villages, there is a time limit.
Yeah.
So I'm asking her to research this.
So I think I'm 1,000% behind you, but I also think even without necessarily changing something too formally, I think we probably have the ability to recommend or request that they
We have a
consider
right to make our own rules.
summarizing their presentation in 2 to 5 minutes. And then to take a pause, if they're comfortable doing that, for comments back from us as a way. Because sometimes what we have is the 8 to 12-minute explanation on materials that in most cases most of us have seen already, and frankly would rather ask questions that we have than to hear it presented again. Not to take anything away from the
But we're
applicants.
saying even the initial, that, at least on some of the things I watch, just one person would go on for 45 minutes, and then someone would get up and object, and then they'd rebut, and then these people would get up, and that just has to stop.
I agree.
So, but I think that
Okay.
the right thing to do is to look at what I have never had an original thought, but I have done a lot of research in my life, and that is to see what other people do and see if they think it worked. So that's what I would hope Alice would be able to do.
Great.
My pleasure.
Great. That being
I
said,
support that initiative.
do I have a motion to close this meeting of March 9th, 2020 of the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
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 Great.